You're listening to the AFTERBUZZ TV Network, now the largest new media platform on the web, and your #1 source for after-show entertainment.
Very good, Dean Johnson.
From the AFTERBUZZ Studios in Los Angeles, California, and streaming live on Ustream, this is AFTERBUZZ TV for Louie. We'll break down tonight's episode and get you all the latest Louie news and gossip. If you'd like to buzz in on tonight's show, you can buzz us at 424-256-1729. That's 424-256-1729. And now, picking up where the show leaves off and the buzz continues, Louie.
Hello, America and around the world. This is Mario Hernandez, and in our lovely AFTERBUZZ booth,
I am Phil Svitek, joining Mario Hernandez.
and we are here to talk about Louie, the final show of our season, which, ironically enough, it was the first show of the actual airing
For the season 2.
Yes, yes. So Louie will be back for a third season. He got picked up, and he'll be back in 2012 with that.
Are we getting to news and gossip already?
Well, I'm just saying. I'm just saying this isn't the last show ever. The
There you
news,
go.
the news. There we go. That's the little lead in. Yeah, it's been a busy week for Louis C.K. A lot of exciting things happening for him this week. Two major pieces of news. The first is his comedy album Hilarious, which is indeed hilarious. Has been nominated for a Grammy Award, which is pretty awesome. So pick that up on wherever you pick up CDs and albums. Maybe download them. But in addition to that, GQ has released its Men of the Year issue, and comedian Man of the Year is Louis C.K. Not surprisingly,
He's #1.
he is. They select, I guess, guys from different areas, and he's like the comedian of the year.
Interesting. All right.
Yeah,
Good
and
for him.
a really nice piece penned by Joan Rivers, who of course was in an episode earlier this season, which Shannon and I talked about a few weeks ago. And you know, she writes a little bit actually about how she was asked to come onto his show, and her experience with him, and how he is a true comic, not just a comics comic, but a true mensch, as it were. And you know, it's really cool to see. Hopefully this will increase, this will raise Louis C.K.'s profile and exposure, because he's still, I think he's still a bit, he's more of a cult comedian, or as they say, a comics comic. It's not a name, his is not a name that's immediately accessible to the masses. Just
Yeah,
yet.
I don't think. I mean, this has been a really good year for Louis. You know, we've had numerous people join us for our after show. You know, you came sort of late in the game. We had Shannon Rogers, we had Gian Molina. Before that, we had John Comerford and Steve Bellamy, all sharing a passion for Louis.
Yeah.
And I mean, we were even talking about the Emmys. Like, that's how far back we were still, you know, doing this show. And he's gained a lot of momentum.
Yeah, he really has this past year. I mean, he was up for an Emmy. Now he's up for a Grammy. I actually, a third piece of news, as I was doing my research right before the show, they have announced that he will be back on Parks and Rec. So he will be back in an early 2012 episode. If you'll remember his character, he played Dave Sanderson, and he left to take a job in San Diego on the show in season 2. But he is now going to be back, according to TVLine.com. Louis C.K. will be back on Parks and Rec. So, you know, that's another show that's also gaining popularity and momentum as well. So yeah, things are looking really good for Louis C.K. and I couldn't be happier. He's you know, he's a journeyman comic that deserves every ounce of his success, and
he he does it all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He writes, he edits, he directs, and none of it suffers because of it.
Right, right. No, he's really you know, for those of you out there that don't know this, I mean, most of the fans probably of the show do know this, but he, like you said, he does it all. That's him. He writes the show. He got such an incredible deal from FX. I don't know which. There's an article that says which executive he linked up with, but they believe in him so much that they basically say, okay, here are the deadlines. We need a show delivered then, and they give him money. And for people outside of the television industry, this is unheard of. I mean, this is not something that happens. There are you know, studios generally approve scripts and you know, standards and practices. They go, you know, line by line. Not to say that they don't go through for his show, but he has such autonomy. He has such, you know, carte blanche to make these shows, and as a result, you know, it's not a show that's by committee. It's his vision. It's his cynicism. It's his New York worldview, because so much of the show, I feel, is very New York. I mean, we're talking about the season premiere of season 2 called Pregnant, which deals with his pregnant sister, played by Rusty Schwimmer, which is a great name, by the way, and we won't make any jokes, because I'm sure she's had plenty of jokes made fun of, but that is a great name, Rusty Schwimmer, like Dave Schwimmer, even though there's no relation. But she plays his pregnant sister, but even at the top of the show, there's an extended, about a minute scene of Louie making what seems to be some sort of like a veal cutlet or some sort of like a, I'm from Texas, we call it chicken fried steak down there, so I don't know exactly what, but so it's this montage of him kind of, you know, pounding the meat and then dipping it in the eggs, and then and it's done to this very hip jazz score that that to me just seems very New York. You know, what other show has jazz in it? And I've mentioned this in previous shows, that it reminds me a bit of Woody Allen, you know, with a lot of like montages of New York, and then with the, you know, overlaid with jazz, which, I mean, you don't see that. You don't see that in network television. You see, you know, pop tunes and other more familiar stuff. So again, that signature, that unique Louis C.K., this is definitely his vision.
Yeah, and ironically enough, I think he probably went through like 500 jazz songs to pick out that one specifically.
Right, to get just the right tempo. You know, his show, I don't want to say his tentacles, but his influence is definitely reaching out there. I was listening to NPR earlier this week, and I forget his name, but it's one of the Broadway stars of some show that I also can't remember right now. I was kind of playing in the background, but he played the father in the episode of the first season where Louis gets bullied. I don't know if you remember. He's at the diner with a girl and these teenagers at the other table, and he ends up following the kid home back to Staten Island. And the father in that scene, that ends up being this kind of belligerent a-hole that ends up hitting his kid, he is now on Broadway in some show. And he was talking about... That's
episode 9, and I'll look up the actor.
Yeah, whoever the father is, he is now on Broadway in something. And he talked about this kind of guerrilla style that Louis C.K. was shooting in, and so, you know, once again, it's a small show. Obviously, there's no special effects, there's no big musical numbers, there's no.
The father's name is Abraham Alvarez.
Okay, and he is somewhere on Broadway right now, doing something, and he talked about how it was just a small crew. He and Louis told him, you know, here's what I'm gonna do. Here's what it's gonna look like. And okay, are you cool with that? Yeah, great. Okay. So now the guy's inside the house. Louis walks away, and he said within minutes there was, you know, a knock at the door. He opens the door like maybe somebody forgot something, and there's Louis, camera over his shoulder, ready to go. So it's very kind of, you know, boom, 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 visceral TV making. So I mean, quite frankly, this is not just the fan in me talking. I think we're seeing something very different on television through this show, and honestly I think it's only a matter of time before it gets some sort of of Emmy or some sort of award, because what Louis C.K. is doing is pretty extraordinary. I
mean, I think by season 3, or I think he's going to be lucky enough to have season 4 and a 5. And with that, with more seasons comes more money, and so that will help him get the. It's going to be part and parcel.
Right. Yeah, it's gonna get a higher profile, and he's gonna start. And he casts New York actors. He casts a lot of locals. He casts what seem to be real people, or at least very, very, very real looking people. The guys in the delis or the people on the streets. These are New York actors. So. Yeah, please, if obviously if you're listening to this, you're probably a fan of the show, but tell your friends about it, because something really extraordinary is happening on TV with each episode, and I'd hate to have people miss out on it. So this episode, Pregnant, we have a really funny, well, actually there's most of the episodes are broken down into 2 or 3 smaller segments.
Yeah.
So there actually is a little bit at the beginning that is almost completely separate from the title storyline, which is Pregnant, which is the pregnant sister, and that's this exchange that he has with his 2 daughters, and they kind of represent the 2 ends of the spectrum, and we see clips of his stand-up, which he's talked about before, which is that the oldest daughter is the oldest daughter, which in any family is the firstborn, is generally well, let's be honest, the most favored. I wonder if my sister's listening, because I'm the oldest in my family. But with the firstborn, you get a lot more. Well, not necessarily more freedoms, but there's a bit more expectation of success. By the second and third, that diminishes a little, and sometimes that actually translates to more freedoms that maybe the firstborn didn't have. But generally speaking, I used to work for a man who was very big into birth order, and anytime I talked about someone, he would always ask, where is he or she in the birth order, because that would determine the person's personality. And it was like, if it's a firstborn, that's a certain type of person. If he's the middle of 10, if he's the 10th, or if it's an only child, like these are big things. And it played out most of the time. He was right. But in this case, he talks about how his oldest daughter is wonderful and a go-getter and does all these things, right? And then but the second daughter, he even has a really funny riff at the beginning, where he basically, says she's a little shit, and how she drags, because she's 5 years old, and he's only with there's the 3 of them when he has custody of his kids. Then he has to drag himself down to the skill level of the 5-year-old, because they can't go biking along the West Side Highway because the little one is incapable of that. So so there's a funny little bit about pandering to the lowest denominator, which in this case is the 5-year-old, and so then they go into this bit where this scene.
I feel like to some degree it's very true for fathers and sons, even more so, rather than mothers and daughters, or fathers and daughters.
How so?
And the classic example is basketball. You know what I mean? Like the son always wants to beat the father at basketball, but he's not able to do so until he's like at least 12, in his teens, let's say.
Right.
And the father, of course, wants to make the kid feel good, and so he has to play down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's frustrating. Like I'm sure especially in sports, as a competitor, any father that's trying to teach a level of sports terminology or whatever, he wants to play. You know what I mean? There's a competitive side to him, so he's not just gonna. And you see it played all the time where he starts off slow and easy, and then all of a sudden the competitive nature comes out.
Boom.
Yeah, and then someone just gets up. Yeah, someone just gets hurt.
Yeah, I think well as the desire to quote unquote toughen your kid up. You don't want to. The instinct is to not lay up for your kid. It's you want to engage your kid, give them the best game, have them play their best game. But you're right. Yeah, sometimes you forget that it's just kids. I worked at a school once where the teachers, we would sometimes play teachers versus students in like kickball or whatever, and there was a very clear dividing line between the nurturing adults that understood that, hey, it's just a game, it's for the kids, and then there were the competitive ones. And interestingly enough, there's one teacher in particular, it was a female. She was super competitive, and we kind of had to cover for her because during one of the games at kickball, she ended up throwing and popping a kid in the face. I mean, like, you know, the rubber balls bouncing off his cheek, and like had to go to the nurse and everything. We had to, you know, calm him down, and it's all part of the game or whatever. Some adults, they lose sight of that. So so he talks about resenting the fact.
But ironically, some kids actually do like that.
And some kids do, absolutely. Some kids want the best game because they want to beat the kid. They want to beat the adults.
Or I mean, you know, it's the age-old saying, you know, you to get better, you got to be around people who are better than you.
Right.
So even when you lose, it's okay because you're still getting better. You're progressing.
Right. Yeah. You say that, you hear that in pretty much everywhere. You know, films and plays and stuff. You say, you know, it's you know, Jack Nicholson walks on, he elevates everyone else's game, kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's So then he gives his daughter the mango pop as he's putting together the food, and then, you know, he cuts it in a way that all of a sudden he turns and the little one is standing right next to him, and all of a sudden, you know, she's like, and the music stops, right? So it's almost like you hear the record scratch because now the scene is shifted, and she says, "I want a mango pop," and he says there was only one, and the little one says, "Well, you know, why does she get one?" And he says, "'Cause you're different people," and she doesn't get that, of course.
But I mean, for me, it's always funny him giving any of these life lessons because, you know, I mean, he's so right, and yet, like, how do you explain that to anyone?
Yeah, to a 5-year-old, that's not, you know, you all she's hearing is no, 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 no. She's focused on getting the mango pop. She couldn't care less about the life lesson. And frankly, I mean, obviously you do want to. You want to impart good lessons at that age and make them, you know, good children and good citizens, but.
Ironically, he had the best sort of explanation for it. You know, she was just lucky. You know what I mean? Whereas other parents, I think they would choose their words less poorly. Right. And he actually had it right. He was just so insecure about it. Yeah. And yeah, he just couldn't get out of it.
Right. And then ding dong, the bell rings, and his pregnant sister arrives, and they have a little moment, and you know, you can kind of see a window into the character of Louie's family background, which was this very kind of frank discussion, a lot of you know, kind of real talk, and you know, oh, you know, I hated your ex-wife and this and that, and then we get into the crux of the actual show, which is the false labor or the false, you know, moment, which once again he does a very interesting thing with it. Rather than make it about the thing, which ends up being a big joke, of course. Yeah. There is a subplot almost with this idea of your neighbors. And once again, we go back to this idea of it being a very New York thing. My fiance watches a lot of house porn. And these are the shows that are on like HGTV and House Hunters and Selling New York and Selling LA. And we were watching an episode of Selling New York, which is this total, you know, fantasy land show where couples are looking for places to live in New York, and so the real estate agent shows them these different places, which, you know, I say Fantasyland because the average New Yorker doesn't go looking at these places, but it's nice to go into these, you know, huge lofts, and, you know, this is, and one of the consistent things that happens to anybody who does not live in New York, an out-of-towner, when they arrive at New York, always has trouble assimilating with how on top of each other everyone is. I mean, you would have to come from a place like I don't know, like a Hong Kong or maybe a Tokyo, some other really densely populated place to really get what it means to live in New York, where, and especially in Manhattan, where people are literally on top of one another. So in the episode that we were watching, one couple was concerned about the privacy because they had an enclosed backyard in Chelsea, and they literally had, you know, it's a backyard surrounded by other buildings, not quite high rises, but buildings. So the issue of privacy, the issue of being with your neighbors, if you're not from there, it's a little unsettling. But people there live on top of one another. People there live with each other, and yet they can be total strangers, as was the case here with Louie and his neighbors. But
I also think that's sort of universal to America, almost. You know what I mean? Even though you can live in a suburb, it doesn't really matter where you live. How many of us really know our neighbors? You know, a lot. I know shows like Desperate Housewives make it out like everyone's talking to everyone all the time.
Well, I think that's changing. I think that's a new thing, because I remember growing up, and I mean, I grew up in cities, not major. I mean, I grew up in San Antonio, and then I lived in Washington D.C. for a while. I think the idea of I think it's two things. One is, I think, and here I'm going to sound like, you know, an old fogey, I think it's the general erosion of manners in general. People have less good manners than they did before. And secondly, and this is certainly not a bad thing, but the multitude of cultures that live together. So there might be kind of, you know, if people don't speak to one another, don't speak the same language, or don't know their customs, some customs are very warm and open and friendly. Others are more quiet and reserved and insular. That's what I think is happening. But I think that's changing. That's a relatively new phenomenon, because if you go back, certainly the perception of America post World War II is that you knew your community, you knew your neighbors, you knew who they were. Although, again, I don't know if that's the case in New York. New York is always kind of, but in New York, you can literally, I mean, you will literally, I mean, you can live next door to a serial killer who has been hacking up bodies and dragging them in the middle of the night. The thing is, you don't want to know. I mean, people don't, in New York, people don't look at each other in the eyes on the train, on the subway. Yeah. It's bad manners. So, I mean, literally, I mean, if you hear your neighbor, you know, dragging a body, kaplunk, 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 up the stairs, I mean, you don't want to know. You don't want to know what's going on in your neighbor's apartment.
And I think, you know, you speak a good point. I think in this episode for Louie, you know, sort of Spanish-speaking guy, he almost knew too much of the right things to say.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's why it threw off Louie. You know, this is your only choice. Like, you got to come with me. It's okay. Blah. So
how great would that have been if he actually was like a kidnapper? If he totally just sweet talked Louie into handing over his kids, and now they're gone. But
and
no.
by the way, that's, I mean, you know, even if, okay, so they're your neighbors, that doesn't mean bad stuff's not going to happen. Like, he still has the ability to beat them while. You know what I mean? So Louie took a big risk.
Yeah, no, and I thought it was so well written in that way, in that, you know, because again, it's imparting a bit of a lesson, and it's kind of showing what can happen when you trust your neighbor. So again, that's what I mean. Here we thought we knew what we were going to see. We were going to see the death or the near death of this pregnancy, and then the show took, you know, veered widely to the left. And it's like, that's not what this show's about. This show is about, you know, fun, you know, neighbors and being good neighbors, and, you know, whatever lesson you want to extrapolate from it. But it ends up being about something different. And then, of course, the button ends up being that it was just gas. She wasn't dying. She was just a big old fart that had to get out. The
greatest quote I ever heard. Yeah. I know it was just a fart.
I know it was just a fart, but
I couldn't do it without you.
Yeah. So we're going to go to a commercial real quick, and then we'll be back to wrap up the final episode of this season's Louie, Pregnant, here on AfterBuzz TV.
AfterBuzz TV. Hi, I was once like you, a lazy, angry loner whose only joy was watching TV and surfing the net. And, like you, after I'd see one of my favorite TV shows, I'd be so excited and have so many questions that I'd actually have to talk to my douchebag coworkers about it at the water cooler. Then I discovered AfterBuzzTV.com. AfterBuzz TV produces after-show webcasts and podcasts for TV series of all kinds, like post-game wrap-up shows for all your favorite TV shows. AfterBuzz TV hosts are industry insiders who break down episodes of shows, take calls from fans, and interview cast and crew from each series, with over 60 different after shows, from Boardwalk Empire to American Idol to Vampire Diaries to Real Housewives, and more. Now, after a night of TV, I can ignore my stupid coworkers, who I hate, and go straight to my desk and watch or listen to all my favorite AfterBuzz TV after shows, and have all the TV fan interaction I need.
Thank you, AfterBuzz TV.
AfterBuzz TV. What do you want to buzz about?
And don't forget, folks, what do you want to buzz about? Make sure you follow all of our shows on AfterBuzz TV. If it's a popular show, we probably have a show for it. If not, we'd love to hear your suggestions, comments, questions, anything you have, things you would like to see on the show, maybe for the upcoming
Popular
season
show coming up is from Mario, Saturday Night Live.
That's right. Immediately after this, we're going to start our first ever Saturday Night Live AfterBuzz TV show, talking about the SNL episode with Jason Segel, which was right before Thanksgiving, and the Muppets as well. I don't know if you saw that. That was...
I haven't had a chance to see the Muppets. I was more into Harold and Kumar, making sure I saw that before I saw the Muppets.
Yes, yeah, that's a big holiday movie.
But nevertheless, I mean,
no, I mean, sorry. I mean, the Muppets were on Saturday Night Live.
Oh, they were?
Yeah. We'll discuss that on that show. But
interesting.
Tune in as we talk about Jason Segel and the Muppets. But I'm saying we're always looking for new shows here and always trying to expand. And interestingly enough, SNL's been on, I think, the longest of all the shows. But
yeah.
So we're gonna get on that. But what about what do you think is going to happen in the third season? Let's do some predictions for the upcoming season of Louie, season 3. This is our, there we go.
Well, I can definitely predict. The good news is, unlike, we jumped in on Louie late, and then, that's the reason why we went backwards and tried to do all, the full season. We did some episodes from season 1, so we'll definitely do the full season, starting from episode 1. Day 1.
On time? Yeah. On time and when it happens?
Yeah.
Sounds good. Okay, so that's our first prediction.
And that is
that AfterBuzz
that
TV
is guaranteed.
We'll learn how to read a TV schedule.
No, it's not that. It's just, we just started late.
Yeah, no,
you know what I mean? Like, our host, decided, like, hey, we love Louie so much, let's do it. And then I thought it was actually a brilliant idea. Like, we only did 4 episodes of Louie. Can we go back and do these?
Yeah.
And so I'm glad we did.
Yeah, it's been a great experience.
I don't know, like, I mean, I can't. His life is just so awkward. I don't know what's more awkward than he's already shown.
Well, he does a beautiful thing by not really necessarily giving us a narrative through line. You know what I mean? It's not like he's on a quest. He's not. Each episode is almost like its own mini movie, and then, like we said, we have subplots. So it's actually it's 2 or 3 movies, and each one is kind of his. Almost like an existential crisis of where he is and what he's doing. Am I doing the right thing? Should I step out of my shell? Should I stop being awkward? Should I man up? Should I work out? Should I,
He almost has a struggle every day where he just literally wants to make the least amount of decisions possible and make the least, and by doing so, he makes the least amount of people uncomfortable, unhappy, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He genuinely hates confrontation.
Yeah, he's really not. Which is the essence of life, right? The essence of drama. So, the sky's the limit for where he can go and what he can do. I would like to see, because he's kind of mined some of his career stuff, some family stuff. This is one of the situations, though, where we almost in a way don't want him to succeed. So I would, I could say, well, he finds love, or he, gets his own sitcom within the sitcom.
But I almost feel like the good thing about him and why it is, unlike most other people, he is kind of self-deprecating and self-fulfilled prophecy. But unlike other people, I'm still rooting for him, and I'm like, this is, okay, it's a self-deprecating guy. It's in a lovable, sweet way that I've never seen done.
Yeah. It's really, it's especially with a lot of, certainly like cop shows are big proponents of this kind of idea of hyper masculinity, of this idea that they're going to go out, they're going to take the world. Here's a guy that's going to be like, look, I don't know. I thought I knew I was in love. Now I'm divorced. I had these kids, and now they're turning out to be kind of a pain in the butt. It's I want to be a comic, but shit, I'm, early 40s and playing clubs. So there's a lot of vulnerability that you're right, that makes him very, very appealing.
Yeah.
Because it resonates. I mean, you might not be a divorced comic yourself, but, life can kick you in the balls sometimes. And there's always this, what am I doing with my life? Am I doing the right thing? Am I a good person? Am I a good person for following the needs of my body? You know, should I be looking for a girl, a mate, or should I just focus on my kids? Is it still, do I still have time? Is it too late? So these are all, I mean, just the material it's so rich, and he's got such a unique, wonderful spin on things that, I mean, we'll pretty much follow him wherever he goes.
Yeah, and especially now, I think, you know, I don't know the ratings offhand, but, you know, from season 1, I remember it was just kind of more word of mouth, and then when season 2 hit, everyone sort of knew about it through that word of mouth, and then now with the Emmys, with the Grant, with all the GQ, now, I mean, you just threw out all this stuff at me. People are going to watch just to say, okay, you know, what is this all about? Yeah,
yeah, and he's, honestly, he's... a Grammy win would be huge. I don't know exactly who else is nominated, but a Grammy win for him would just be amazing, and that of course would do a lot for him, for the show. So you know, we're seeing something again. We're seeing something really unique out there, folks. And if you're a fan, obviously, if you're listening to this, tell your friends about it. Go back online. You know, get someone. The holiday season is coming up. You know, buy the DVDs and or downloads or whatever it is you do, and pass them along and buy them legally. So
yeah, well, get an iTunes card. You know what I mean? Have them download that way.
And download it that way, because you know, the what's happening with this show does not happen often. Doesn't happen ever. So, you know, you get, if you really love this show, and this is also his like 3rd or 4th show. You know, they've been trying to give him a presence on television for the last 10 or so years, and this is finally, he's found the right home at FX. He's found a solid fan base. You know, you owe it to yourselves, if you're really interested in the comedy that's in the tradition of Richard Pryor, that's in the tradition of, in a way, Eddie Murphy as well, just kind of, you know, social satire of people being really vulnerable on stage and talking about the things that keep them up at night. You know, check out Louis C.K. Tell all your friends about him. Buy his CD, his Grammy-nominated album, hilarious, and really support this guy, because he's the real deal. He's a gamer. He's been in it, and you know what? He's hysterical. Like, forget like what he deserves and where he belongs and whatever. Take a listen to his stuff. Listen to his stand-up. He's a hysterical dude. Tune into the show. Come back and see us, season 3, AfterBuzz TV with Louie. I'm going to be doing some improv this weekend at the iOS Theater with my group Conrad on Sunday night at the iOS Loft, 10:30. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter, Cinemario, CINEMARIO. But we will see you in season 3. I am Mario Hernandez, and in the booth,
Phil Svitek. And don't forget SNL, and we do a lot of other comedy shows as well, including The League, Community, Parks and Rec, Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Hosted by actual comics, and hosted by, and having people call in who are the, you know, the writers and actors on the show. So exactly. Right here is your hub. We had Chris Kula call in for, or was in the studio for Community.
He was in studio.
He was in studio. So here we go. We got the writers here, folks. So right here is where all the information hovers. This is the hive. This is where you get the AfterBuzz.
Yes, indeed. All right, guys. Thank you for a good season. I want to thank personally Mario Hernandez for, you know, we've had a few hosts. Not to say, you know, no, it was. I like how the baton was always passed.
It was wonderful, I mean? Right? It was a relay race.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Now you.
and a shared passion for Louie. And you know what I mean? It's not like anyone quit. It was just the baton was passed, which I liked.
So we'll cross our fingers and see if we can't get him on the horn for season 3.
Yes, indeed.
From producers Kevin Undergaro and Phil Svitek, engineer DJ Jesse Janity, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. If you have questions or comments, be sure to buzz us at info@AfterBuzzTV.com. And you can find us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter by searching for AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
Buzz you later, folks.
One final time before season 3.
That's right.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.